Okay, so hello, myself Harshita from Life Education, and this is the third lecture of biological classification in which we're going to study Protista. So, Protista, okay, so now that we are at Protista, let's recall everything. In the first lecture, we studied the basic classification system. Like we studied about who classified organism for the first time and the next time, the evolution of classification basically, and what kingdoms do we have to study in detail. We studied more in more detail. We studied five kingdom classification, which includes Monera, Protista, Fungi, Animalia, and Plantae. Plantae and Animalia, yeah, I know. Okay, so we have done Monera till now, and it is the third lecture of our series, and now we're going to study Protista in detail. So, Protista are single-celled organisms, but they are eukaryotic. In Monera we studied they were single-celled, but they were prokaryotic. So from now on, like from Protistans, the eukaryotic character will start to arise. Okay. These form link with fungi, plantae and animalia. This is a real interesting part about Protista that we are going to study in further few minutes, in which we will form links with fungi, plantae and animalia also. There are higher kingdoms. So how does they do that? We will know it for let's keep it a secret for some time. Okay, now last point is cilia is present on their body. Okay, so now that we know the basic Protestant characters, right? What are Protista? They are eukaryotic organisms, but they are single cell, like unicellular eukaryotic organisms. These are the only ones which are single celled and eukaryotic also. And these form links with fungi. This is we will study after some time, when we will be discussing in detail like the groups that Protista includes, and the cilia. Cilia are present all over the body. Like it is a Protestant character. Okay, so let's say Protista. I have made a flow chart which will make it easier to remember. Protista are divided into three parts briefly. That is autotrophic, decomposers, and protozoans. Protozoans are protozoans. This is the last part of this Protista. So let's leave it aside and discuss this. Autotrophs are chrysophytes and dinoflagellates and nucleonoids. These three are autotrophic protistans, and slime molds are decomposers like saprophytic. They feed on dead and decaying matter, right? We know what saprophyte is. Okay, so chrysophytes first. Chrysophytes are also known as jewels of plant kingdom, like jewelry. Okay, so these are found in fresh water. These are microscopic, of course, and they float passively on water currents. Example is zooplankton or phytoplankton. These are photosynthetic, as we have studied in the flow chart also. So these are also divided into two parts, that is diatoms and golden algae. Golden algae is also known as desmides. And except for this information, we do not have any other information in NCERT given to us. So we're going to discuss diatoms in detail. But about golden algae these are also known as desmides. So yeah. Okay, so next we're gonna study dinoflagellates. So dinoflagellates are mostly marine, and these are photosynthetic. We have studied this in our flowchart again, and these show bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is the property of emitting light in absence of light, like fluorescent light, like we have studied about ctenophores also. The next is color. They vary in color largely, like from yellow to green to brown to red. These all depends upon the pigments present in it. Of course, the pigments decide the color of a substance. So cell wall is made up of stiff cellulose plates. Next, the most important point is they have two flagella, and in which one is longitudinal and the other one is transverse. This is the most important part. Like one is longitudinal, other is transverse. These undergo rapid multiplication. This is also an important part. These undergo rapid multiplication and form red sea. Like these multiply. As I told you in the previous lectures, that in biology the division of an organism or multiplication of an organism means the same thing. So they divide and increase their number, and because of the increase in number, the sea appears to be red, and we call it red tides. So this is an important term also if you are appearing for boards or kind of school level exam or even NEET. Not that important, but yeah. The example is Gonia lax. Gonia lax is just this. It divide and multiply rapidly and form red tides, and it also releases toxins which are harmful for aquatic life, and these toxins are known as saxitoxin. 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 So these affect aquatic life very drastically. So this was all about dinoflagellates. We have done chrysophytes and dinoflagellates till now. So in chrysophytes we studied two things, like desmites, or we can say golden algae, that we didn't study at all. And the next one was diatom. Diatoms form diatomaceous salts. Dinoflagellates form red sea or red tides. Okay, so this was the recap. Okay, so euglenoids. The next one is euglenoids. These euglenoids are identical to plants. The most important point, I was telling you before that these protists resemble fungi, plants, and animals. So the one identical to plants is euglenoids. We have to remember this point. And why does it like resemble plants? Is because of the pigments present in euglenoids. The pigments present in euglenoids are identical to plants. The pigments present in plants. So the majority are freshwater, surrounded by a protein-rich layer called pellicle. So this is important. Instead of a cell wall, they have a protein-rich layer over them, which is also known as pellicle, or basically which is only known as pellicle. So next they have two flagella, like dinoflagellates. They have two flagella. Unlike they had one longitudinal and one transverse, they had one short and one long. And it is not necessary. Some do not have a flagella, and the non-flagellated protist euglenoids do wriggling movements, like we can say in a Desi language, ringna. So these do wriggling movements when they are non-flagellated, and this wriggling movement is known as metaboly, or we can say euglenoid movement also, specific to their name, right? And the next reserved food material is paramylon. Okay, we can remember it, right? Pellicle, paramylon, protein, or PPP. It's kind of a trick, and it's a very weird trick, but yeah. In presence of sunlight, they behave as autotrophs. That is, they are photosynthetic in presence of light. But when there is no sunlight, or when they are deprived of sunlight, they behave as heterotrophs. Like in presence of sunlight, they prepare their own food, and in absence of sunlight, they eat the other plants or other things. Examples are paramecium or euglenoids. Paramoecium. These are examples. So this was all about euglenoids. Okay, so let's study slime molds in detail. Slime molds are identical to fungi. So let's see it further. These are also known as saprophytic protists. Okay, so now we are studied in our flowchart that 3 were autotrophic, 1 were decomposer or saprophytic. So this one is saprophytic, and as it is saprophytic, it is identical to fungi itself, right? Under suitable condition, it forms plasmodium. Under unfavorable condition, it differentiates and forms fruiting bodies, and on these fruiting bodies, at the tip of these fruiting bodies, spores are present, and these spores contain true walls, and these are highly resistant to environmental conditions because it is unfavorable condition, and they have to survive. So these are highly resistive, and they are dispersed by air currents so that the further reproduction can happen. So this is all about slime mold. The example of slime mold is slime mold. Okay, so amoeboid. Amoeboid are like amoeba. So amoeba, from amoeba we recall that amoeba has pseudopodia. Pseudopodia. What are pseudopodia? False peak. So they move and capture their prey through putting out pseudopodia. So these are like just amoeba. This is just amoeba, I can say. So the example is Entamoeba histolytica. Now next is flagellated. In flagellated, they must have flagella in them, and they are parasitic. The example, most important example of it is Trypanosoma gambinis. This causes sleeping sickness, or most specifically African sleeping sickness. Now next is ciliated. These ciliated ones show nuclear dimorphism. We're not gonna go get deep in it, but yeah, dimorphism like two dual characters. The nucleus is divided into two parts, which is one is small and other one is large. The smaller one is reproductive and the larger one is vegetative nucleus. So these ciliated have cilia all over their body. The example will be paramecium. We have already studied it, right? Now next one and the last one is sporozoans. Sporozoans are any organism that has spore in his lifetime. Like in the whole lifetime, a spore-like stage present in them is known as sporozoans. And the last part of protist or this lecture is protozoans. These protozoans are all heterotrophs and these are identical to animals. So this is the last part and they are identical to animals. Okay, so if you remember in the first lecture, I have told you if you see anywhere, if you see zoa, it will resemble animals. So this is the reason why these are identical to animals or why the name is protozoans. So these are divided into 4 parts: amoeboids, flagellated, ciliated and sporozoans. So example for sporozoans would be plasmodium. So there has to be a confusion. Like we have already studied plasmodium and now we are again studying plasmodium. So these are different plasmodium. This plasmodium causes malaria in human beings. That plasmodium was a structure found in favorable conditions. So this was all about Protista today. We have studied chrysophytes. In chrysophytes we have studied diatoms and not desmites. After that we studied dinoflagellates and then euglenoids, slime molds and protozoans. This was the end of the chapter. Now in the next lecture we are going to study fungi and virus together will probably, because animals and plants are going to be in other chapters itself. So we're not going to study plants or animals in this chapter. So thank you and have a nice day.